All right, guys, we're going to talk about some interesting things, and I think y'all probably already looked into this, but you can't talk about this one enough. Garth Daybell and what he said to his friend at the haunted house. This is a game changer if true. All right, stick around, guys. We're going to talk. So Chad Daybell's children took the stand, and it was for the defense, not the prosecutors. And Garth Daybell is the one I want to talk about first. He is the one that, he took an oath to tell the truth, and then he took the stand. Now, many people have wondered if they were coached by the defense. If they weren't coached, it was very evident that John Pryor was at least leading them on the stand.
How many times prior to today have we spoken together?
I think no more than 3.
Okay.
Including today.
Okay. If you include today, we did speak yesterday for a brief time. Is that correct?
Yes.
But did I tell you anything to say, or did I encourage you to testify a certain way?
No.
Did I give you any advice of any kind?
The only advice given was to just tell the truth.
Okay.
So a lot of people kind of question that since John Pryor, when he does speak to these children, he seems to understand who they are. Seems quite comfortable with them. Now let's talk about September 9th, okay? This is the day that Tylee might have been placed on his property. A lot of people have wondered, how in the world did he do this without anybody around him knowing it? We know that Chad said earlier in a text to Tammy that he had seen a raccoon during the day. He was just walking along. He suggested that he killed it and then also mentioned burning limbs. Now, let's think about it in a way that the possible truth could be that Tylee is there and that she's no longer here on Earth, and they have to do something about that. So there's 2 possibilities. Either there's a raccoon or they're trying to cover up something that's not so good. Garth, who says he's an 8th grade science teacher, is returning home from work. He pulls into the driveway, and it's around 4 p.m. that day. According to police, Alex Cox was on that property earlier that morning and left sometime after the afternoon. At least that's what his phone information read. So now you have a witness that says that they see Chad Daybell in his work yard clothes. This is really important, at least to me it is.
The September 9th of 2019. Do you recall that?
I think that if I recall correctly, that's the day that I drove home.
Okay, and about what time did you get home that day?
So I got home from work about a little after 4, because that's when my contract hours ended, and so it'd take about 20 minutes to drive home, and I pulled into the back driveway.
Okay, and hold on a second. So on the date of September 9th of 2019, you had testified that you were just getting home. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have an occasion in that, and was it late afternoon or evening? Do you recall?
It was late afternoon. The sun was still up.
Okay. Did you have an occasion to talk to your father?
I did. As I pulled in, he came up to me. He was in work clothes. And
all right, now hold on. When you say clothes, what does that mean?
Yard work.
Okay.
And he sounded very excited. He said, "Hey, Garth, I killed another raccoon."
Okay, was that the raccoon that you folks were having difficulty with that was breaking out of the cage?
I believe it was.
Okay, and did he express that to you, that he finally got that raccoon?
He did.
Okay. And then at that point, did he show you where he buried that raccoon?
He showed me that it was buried behind the silver shed.
Okay. Okay.
Another interesting fact is he starts to talk about the fact that his mother might have had health issues and that she had a bruising cream that she was rubbing onto her arm. Has anybody ever heard of a bruising cream? She hurt her wrist. It wasn't said that she had a bruise on her wrist, but Garth's interesting choice of words was she used a bruising cream. And if you don't know, there were bruises on Tammy after she was found deceased. And there has been a lot of argument as to how those bruises come to be. So was it the reason for him mentioning bruising cream to kind of suggest that maybe, that's why these bruises were there? Most creams, when one injures their wrist in the joint, is for anti-inflammatory, not for bruising. And to be honest with you, how many of us have ever used a bruising cream? So that stood out to me, and I'm sure to many of you. Also, we'll go back to September 9th, and he's talking about how his father showed him where he buried the raccoon that supposedly he killed that day. We know that they found Tylee's remains there and that they were charred in pieces and even hacked upon. No one knows exactly what happened that day, though they should, considering the fact of how many people were living at that house. A lot of people feel that the kids seen more and know more than they care to admit. And here you have Garth Daybell admitting to that on September 9th, he sees his father working in the yard alone, not with Alex Cox, no Lori Vallow. But why is it that we didn't hear questions about the fire supposedly burning in the yard? So was the fire burning that day? Or was it the next day or the next day after that? There's no doubt in my mind that they were struggling with that fire, at least to get the desired outcome they were hoping for. Another thing that's really interesting is how Garth is an expert to what's going on in their family when making his mother look pretty bad. No one understands why he's doing this. If you were to hear it from their kids, you would think that Tammy was nearly on her deathbed and should have probably needed a walker. But that is not what coworkers said. They didn't see Tammy fainting, struggling to catch her breath, or even hear her complain. So what makes the kids' testimony make you wonder if it's, perjury? Speaking of perjury, we know that now that we didn't know about this, but the kids are being questioned on their truthfulness at the very beginning. And because they're being questioned and watched by investigators, they're making it look as if they're being bullied by investigators. Wow. This is just an odd situation. So if you had any hope that these children, because a lot of people do, they were hoping that they weren't brainwashed by Chad. But you got to remember, Chad most likely, at least from what we know, seemed to be the man in charge of the home. He got his way by using godly gifts, talking to the spirits. Kind of as a chosen people. Why? Because they say that, we can see light and dark. We can tell that someone that's not acting as they believe they should act, well, they're considered dark or they have something dark happening. Interestingly, the kids said they didn't actually support everything their parents did. Not necessarily, though they are LDS. And that they necessarily didn't believe in the light and the dark, at least to their extreme. But we heard tape that suggests otherwise, right? So a lot of people are wondering, are these kids believable? And will the jury catch on to who we know these kids to be? And that is kids that are submerged and brainwashed. Chad Daybell is a narcissistic parental guide, okay? brainwashing is when a parent with these narcissistic tendencies manipulates their child into thinking false things about, especially their other parent or anyone they feel could draw away their power. So we wonder, was he portraying Tammy as an unloving or dangerous, unintelligent, or otherwise not so good parent, just to put it frankly? Most importantly, another sign is making a child believe that they are part of their plans, making a child feel guilty or pity for not helping this other parent stay in full control. And so when you see the kids testifying, that's what I see. I see them having pity for Chad Daybell instead of pity for the person that's 6 foot under. Now, what's interesting is Garth Daybell says that he worked with his mother in their yard quite often, and that he was his mother's muscle.
Choose that you had concerns about your mother's health?
We worked in the yard together a lot, and I was her muscle. She would direct me where to dig and move stuff and cinder blocks and garden things, and she had a hard time doing those heavier things.
And why do you say she had a hard time with it?
She would get really winded really easily.
Okay. And is that something that happened in the last year of her life, or was that the entire time that you knew her?
I would say it became increasingly more towards the end of her life.
Okay, now let's talk about when this is happening. So the summer had just passed. They're in Idaho, and he's saying it's more towards the end of her life. So this is in October. In most cases, you're not going to be gardening in October up there. So, and you're not going to be gardening in September. In fact, your gardens are going to be at their peak and dying off. And there's not a lot of gardening time in Idaho anyways. And to be honest with you, did anybody see very many gardens in that yard? So, it sounded like they were kind of moving things around from time to time, and she had her kids help her, and that she would get winded. Well, anybody would get winded if you're working hard in the yard, and especially a woman, since our muscles are not quite as strong as men's. But why was getting winded even an important subject? Why point it out? I mean, this is something everybody does. We all get winded. Well, there's only one reason that you can probably guess or speculate on, and that is to make it seem as if Tammy was having issues before she passed away. And this is why many people have problems understanding the Daybell kids is, why are they doing this? Well, I just told you just a few seconds ago that brainwash, well, they're going to be made to feel pity for the man in control. Garth mentions that Tammy has fainting spells after kneeling down for a while. And this, if you go look it up online, this is common. This isn't a health issue. This is caused because your blood is suddenly circulating. Give me a second here. They start pointing out that Tammy went to the temple and was having some difficulty kneeling. Okay, let's take Pryor and anybody over 40 and make them kneel that don't work out regularly and see how quick they get up. A lot of people who are worried about the kids testifying and their impact on this case, well, I don't think there's much to worry about. The jury most likely will figure it out easily. Number one, they're pointing at the cops and saying, they're following us, they're harassing us. That's going to make them want to take a closer look as to why that would be happening. And then they're going to put the two and two together. That they had no concern for the mother who isn't here any longer. Now let's talk a little bit about the fact that Pryor did rest and that prosecutors brought in a few witnesses for rebuttal. The most interesting, I think, is the detective that the kids were basically calling a liar. It seems like he took that to heart, and can you blame him? I mean, here he is trying to do what he can to solve a homicide of 2 children, a mother, and a man several states away, Charles Vallow. Well, you have to investigate everybody involved. Do they think they're special? They're the only ones that investigators were watching? And again, I said last video, they were more focused on the detectives watching them than they are finding out what happened to their mother. They seem to believe that their mother wasn't murdered. And if they do know that this was the case, why are they defending it? Now, several of you have commented lately, and right now I have a lot going on. So what I'm going to do is go through that stuff this weekend and prepare a video where you guys basically tell the story. This is going to be taken from your comments that you left, and it's from subscriber comments. I do want to talk about Joseph Murray, and we'll kind of go through some of his testimony, and we'll pick out what we believe are lies and try to figure out why he's lying in court. You got to remember, they take the oath. If they're such godly people, why are you lying under oath? That's the way most people feel. So that's our opinions here. A lot of people are going, oh my God, a lot of these Daybell children are teachers and they're around kids every single day. That's kind of scary. It really is, because you don't know just how deep they are in this case and what they know. Many cases like this, the kids usually are quick to figure out, hey, I know who the bad guy is. And this is not okay. He hurt our mother, and we don't accept this. But right now you have the defense that's trying to say, look, I've got my specialists here that are saying something different. Speaking of specialists, how about those witnesses that were speaking on Tylee's demise? We learned some new stuff, but did this testimony help defense or did it help prosecutors? We'll talk about that. So share your comments below of how you feel, and we will talk about it hopefully on the next video. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.